Hello everybody, James here, and it's Ask Dutch Anything, episode 51 with the Dutchman himself. We are going to... Who are you calling?
None of your business. If I wanted you to know, I would tell you.
Okay. What's your PIN number?
Stop it.
Okay. Intro. So, Pro Wrestling Tees. Follow us there. Links are in the description. Buy a t-shirt if you want to support the show. Also, like us on Facebook, Storytime with Dutch Mantell. There's some exclusive stuff. We've not been posting there as much at the moment. We've been really busy, but we will, I promise you. Merchandise as well.
What are we going to post? What are we going to post?
I don't know. It's up to someone else. I don't run it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, no, everyone's been very busy with a variety of different things behind the scenes anyway. So, merchandise, I've got 2 books, one on Owen Hart, one on The Rock, 2 fine biographies that I wrote myself. Links are in the description. Dutch has got 2 books as well. God, I'm so tired, Dutch. The World According to Dutch and Tales from a Dirt Road. And I'm burping. If you want them signed, you go to Dirty Dutchman with 2 L's at gmail.com. You've also got diplomas there. You've also got signed hats you can get from Dutchman himself. The Stevie Richards Show comes out every single Friday. It's on YouTube as well as all podcast platforms. Please support us. We are growing at an exponential rate, doing very, very well. And the most important thing is...
How many subscribers does your other
34,000 or something like that.
That's good.
Yeah, which is good for 5-6 weeks. Not bad.
That's good.
Email, the most important one as well, is questionsfordutch@gmail.com if you want to submit your questions. So the Dirty Dutchman for consideration.
Does Stevie have this?
No, we don't do fan questions on that.
Why not? Questions for Stevie.
We could do.
I think he'd have a lot of questions.
Eventually, we probably will, but for now, we're not. We've just got so much to talk about that it's like, okay, well, like with the news thing, the main show lasts 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is like, I asked maybe 12 questions and we stretched it out over 2 hours. For Stevie, I asked 4 or 5, and it goes 2 hours yet.
On 4 or 5 questions?
Yeah. Genuinely, we delve that deeply into, subjects at least. I'll ask follow-up questions, of course, but yeah.
You're having a conversation with Stevie.
Yes, the one that came up on the Friday just gone is all about steroids and testing in WWE, and like just those 2 subjects. Well, that subject took like an hour. Yeah. So we really go in depth on these kinds of things. Let me tell you.
You have to go in depth.
Oh God, you have to get all the way to the vein. With them.
See, I've taken steroids.
You told me this. Was it the pills, the Dianabol or whatever?
Yeah. But see, what they didn't tell me was you're supposed to work out with it too. I just took the steroids and I just got fat.
Where'd you get them from? Did you?
It's a joke. No, but see, you just get it from guys. I don't even know where they got it. It's a prescribed medication, correct?
Can be, but it'll be off prescription, I'm sure, for a lot of of people at the time. Thing is, I think they're more prevalent than ever, and I think it's Instagram. All these Instagram models and wannabes, and they say, hey, if you want to look like this, just do this exercise, which is usually a load of bullshit because actually they're on a load of gear. And, they're actually cheating to get that way in the first place. But, these impressionable young morons out there think that's not true. And, and then they eventually get into steroids or TRT or whatever it is themselves and, risk their health. That kind of thing for clout online, I guess.
See, I used to hear about steroids going up and down the road with these guys and you'd go and but see, it wouldn't go for 2 hours. It would go for like 5 minutes. Then we'd get on something else. Then we'd talk for something else for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Then it would go back to the steroids. Then we'd go to something else. So it was it was like a tennis match of back and forth. And by the time the trip was over, I didn't know any more about steroids than what I knew before I started, but I thought I did.
That's why you didn't work out with them.
And they thought they did too. So
we got past the time, haven't you? We're going to go to our first question asker. They all wrote in via questionsfordutch@gmail.com. And the first one is from Robert. Hey, Dutch and James. You're both still doing a great job, thank you. So recently, Dutch had trouble remembering the name of the company that sold the wrestling gear. The name of that company was Carl and Hildegard Wrestling Wear, located in Ohio. They started in 1953 and are still around today as K&H Wrestling Wear. When I worked for Chris Adams, that's who we ordered our gear from too. He also asks, I've heard Gary Hart's wild stories about Jon Jardine, the spoiler. Dutch, did you have any experiences with Jon Jardine? Many thanks.
Jon Jardine, I met him in Florida. Big guy. He was like 6'6", 6'7". And he did a move that Undertaker ended up adopting, walking the top rope. And I've never seen anybody walk the top rope, let alone a guy who was 6'7". And he would take the hand and, and then he would come off on the shoulder and hit it with a chop or hit it with an arm or something. But he was kind of a quiet guy, and I never knew him to really be loud or out of place in anything. I didn't know him long, made a few trips with him, and I don't even know where he's from. Tell you the truth. Where is Jon Jardine from? Canada?
I'll just have a look.
Jardine's a French name, I think.
He hasn't got I was going to say he hasn't got a Wikipedia. No, he hasn't got a Wikipedia. Al Jardine was a co-founder of the Beach Boys. But the spoiler, Don Jardine...
I don't think that's him.
No, it's going to take me too long to find out, I think. It's taken me to Pro Wrestling Stories. Where Canada, yeah. It was Canada. There you go.
Yeah. So he was a little bit different. And every time I rode with a guy like Jardine, who had more experience than I did, of course, I would try to learn something from him. If nothing else, I'd learn like who was in charge of a certain area or certain territory, who the booker was at the time. Had the guy that I was talking to, had he worked there? How did he like it? And what he recommended? And, so I would take all this in. So I would just save it away for future reference in case I needed it. And there was nothing that Jon Jardine did that I really, because he was so big. So a lot of his moves wouldn't work for me. And I probably weighed in about 200 pounds at the time. So, moves for a 200-pounder and moves for a 270-pounder, are quite different. But I just got more general information from him. But he was a good worker and he did draw money.
Next question. Edward has written, did you ever at any point consider the TNA World Title to be a viable world title, whether it be the TNA or NWA TNA belt, during your time with the company?
Did I consider it a viable world title?
Well, they obviously called it a world title, but did it seem like a genuine world title, or was it just
No, not really. It was we might as well call it world title because it's made up and given anyway. So give it the best title you can give it. I mean, I wouldn't call it the corner of 5th and 7th Street world's title. I mean, you got to call, and even calling it a regional title like Southern title, still, if you hear world and Southern, what's going to take precedence? The world title. So might as well call it, and it was the world title in TNA, and, the guys were competing for that title. And we did have some really, really good names. We had Jeff Jarrett, we had Sting, we had Kurt Angle, we had the Dudley Boys, we had the Hardys. So there were names there that, could compete for that. And it would be believable but then you're going off the names and they had a lot of good names there, great names. Samoa Joe. I'm just trying to think of some of the, I think Seth Rollins, he wasn't there, but I think he had made attempts to get in there, but that was way before they went to WWE or WWF. So
I'm looking at the NWA title holders in TNA in order. So I won't say them all, but Ken Shamrock was the first one.
Yep.
Ron Killings was the second one.
Yes.
R-Truth. I always forget that he was a title holder there. Jeff Jarrett, AJ Styles. They also... Here's an interesting one. Ray Gonzalez, who you will know.
Ray Gonzalez was the world title holder in what was it? TNA?
Yeah, so Jeff Jarrett lost the NWA TNA title to Ray Gonzalez in San Juan, Puerto Rico. He held it for 1 day.
Ray Gonzalez.
Ray Gonzalez held it for 1 day.
Well, I'll tell you how that worked. Probably Jeff made a shot in San Juan, I'm sure, on a Saturday. They left on Sunday to go to was it a pay-per-view he lost it?
I'm going to do you one better. He won it the same day. Is it Juicio Final 2005?
Juicio.
Yeah.
I don't even know what Juicio means.
I don't know either. I'll look it up in a second. But yeah, he lost it and won it on the same day.
I don't get how they could do that the same day.
I
don't get it.
Two separate matches. Well, I'll tell you exactly. Hang on. Oh, God, let me get my glasses. Hang on. We're going through the history of the TNA version of the NWA World Title here. The title... Oh, here we go. I've got that wrong. So, Gonzalez pinned Jarrett on April 3rd in San Juan, but the decision was reversed after the match due to an unauthorized referee counting the pinfall. While the originally sanctioned referee was knocked out, title change was initially ignored by TNA, but was retroactively recognized by TNA... by the NWA, in 2015. The title was returned to Jarrett due to the nature of the championship match. On the previous official website, the NWA regarded this as a continuation of Jarrett's third title reign rather than the start of his fourth, which is a bit confusing.
And what year was this?
2005.
I think we were trying to get that office to work with us. But that's another kind of a messed up deal, trying to get that office to do anything to work with you unless you're WWE. But I didn't know that Ray had the title. I didn't know that.
I'll give you a couple
more. I was there.
You were there? Well, you weren't in San Juan at the time. You were in TNA at the time. AJ Styles again. Raven. Rhino. We never talk about Rhino, you know. How was he to work with?
Good guy. He doesn't talk a lot, kind of a quiet guy, kind of stays to himself mostly, not a hellraiser, not a drinker that I know about. So, but a good guy.
Yeah. Juicio means judgment.
What if I'd have said, you asked me, what about him? I said, he's a no good mother.
I believe
you. I just blasted him.
I believe you. The last few: Christian Cage, Jeff Jarrett, Sting, Abyss, Christian Cage. I don't remember Abyss being the champion. Well, there you go. Have you seen what's happened to the NWA title these days? Because it was Tyrus and now it's EC3.
No. Oh, well, I only watched Tyrus on
Gutfeld.
It's only because it's kind of a comedy show too. No, but so what are they doing with it?
Well, it's on EC3 now, but there was a match between, I think it might have been EC3 and Tyrus, that is as bad of a match as you could ever hope to see in your entire life. And it was not EC3's fault, I don't think, for the most part.
Hey, listen, Tyrus was never known for his ability inside the ring.
I was going to say, never known for his ability.
He's been out of the ring for at least 10 years. At least. Maybe more. And I think he just ended up with the title because of who owns the NWA? Billy Corgan?
Mm-hmm.
So... but what he did a lot for the title actually, because Gutfeld it's the top rated show for the night after 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
and you still get a lot of people, but he gave them a lot of publicity.
Yeah, but that didn't translate into any interest in the NWA though, at all. He just sort of carried the belt and, you've got a belt and then moved on.
You don't know.
We do know because NWA's pay-per-views can be measured, the buy rates can be measured on your fingers and toes, the people who buy them.
Okay, what do they get on the buy rate?
Well, the last one, the really bad one that Jim Mitchell did, the old Devil's Dandruff on.
Yeah.
I've heard...
What'd that do?
I've heard numbers anywhere between around 200 to 500 buys.
That is bad.
Yeah.
That is bad. I think you could almost go to a town and just put it on pay-per-view and have that many. Yeah, but I think the people are just damn pay-per-viewed out, to tell you the truth. Plus, I don't think they do they still have a TV show?
Not on TV, no.
Well, what would you do?
It's on the CW Network app, which no one watches, yeah.
Well, of course you're not going to do anything. What would WWE do on the app?
Well, WWE NXT is going to be moving to the CW Network proper in a few weeks. They wouldn't be on an app.
But still, that's over the air. That's...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you can't depend on an app. And I don't know why Billy Corgan, he's a hell of a wrestling fan. But I don't know why he would. I don't know what he pays those guys, but can't be that much.
I like how you're assuming he pays them. He might do, for all I know.
So are you kind of insinuating that the guys pay Billy to be on the pay-per-view? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was insinuating. Oh, I thought you were insinuating that the pay-per-view. Sorry, the NWA TV show was being paid like advertising to be on the app. Anyway, yeah, it's not as good as it once was. Anyway, we're going to move on. Rob has written in and says, "Hi James and Dutch, love the show. Been listening since the start. On your recent show, you were discussing ticket prices. Well, here are ticket prices for AEW and WWE in Cardiff Arena in Wales. The same seats. So I did my own research. So AEW is doing a Dynamite taping a few days before All in Wembley. So this is less than 2 weeks away, essentially. And then WWE is going to be holding an event in the same building, but I think it's a house show in like October. WWE for first, like not the floor, but the first tier, the first raised bit. WWE are charging £96.35. AEW are charging £150.35 for the same seat. And
AEW is charging more than WWE?
AEW is charging more than 50% more for the exact same seats in the same building.
Really?
Mm.
I think it would be just the opposite. Wouldn't you think?
You'd think, especially because keep in mind that they're struggling to sell tickets to Wembley All In at this point, right? And Cardiff isn't a million miles away from... It's like 3 hours drive. Okay, it's fairly far away in fairness. But the thing is that are you going to pay £150, which is what, $200, for a bog standard seat for a TV taping? Or are you going to spend that same amount of money and go to Wembley Stadium and see a massive show?
No, I would go to Wembley if I was going to spend that money.
Of course.
But you think that would be reversed, to tell you the truth. How big is Cardiff of the arena?
I don't know, it's like the Motor Point Arena or whatever it used to be called. It's not big.
Is it an older one?
I don't know if it's an older one. It's not big.
I've been in the one, it was an old building, or a pretty old building. But I kind of like the building. Does it have a stage in it?
Oh, good. I'm just having a look here. Hang on. So it's the Cardiff International Arena. I hope this is the right one. 5,000 seated.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a big one.
5,000 is not big.
No, sorry. Right. So I'm right. Yeah, it's the Utilita Arena, Cardiff. The capacity is 5,000 seated. It's probably a bit bigger for wrestling, but yeah. And the other thing is that AEW has sold like no tickets to it. And to make matters worse, they're not even advertising it properly. I asked on Twitter earlier, and someone said the most they've done is a brief lower third crawl, right? And then they've mixed that in with a couple of other, like an esports arena and somewhere else as well. So they barely advertise this show, and it's a Dynamite taping.
Wow. Who's in charge of that? Tony?
Mm-hmm. Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah, ultimately. But they're not going to draw with that. If you, listen, I told people one time, I said, if they said Jesus Christ was going to walk through that field tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock, and they just said it a time or two, well, hell, you wouldn't have anybody there. But if you broadcast it like a big event, like he's coming over, hell, you'd sell it out, the whole field. But they got to know what's going to happen, or at least they're going to be there.
So in the States, I did work this out. A front row seat for an event next month in Texas is $320 to an AEW Dynamite taping.
Ringside,
front row.
Yeah.
Have a guess how much it is in Cardiff. This is just the Dynamite taping, bog standard. Same deal. It was a Dynamite taping in the States, Dynamite taping here. I'll tell you what it is. About $1,000.
In Texas?
No, in Cardiff. In Texas, it was $320.
$1,000, and it's $300 in Texas.
Yeah,
which
basically.
I think is highly, highly overrated, and it's overpriced. When did all these damn wrestling ticket prices just skyrocket?
I'll tell you, COVID. Because there couldn't be any live events for about a year, and then ticket prices shot up after the fact to make up for that, and then they found that people would continue paying, and therefore all ticket prices have gone crazy since then. They basically found that people will continue paying ridiculous prices, except for AEW, because they've barely sold any seats to this thing because they haven't advertised it.
Oh my God. Hey, this world has left me behind because I do not understand this at all. Would you pay $1,000?
Okay, I'd have to think twice about 100.
Yeah.
But I'm just a cheapskate. I turned down
a
few years ago seen Stevie Wonder for $80. And I was like, equivalent of, I was like, I'm not paying that. And that's Stevie Wonder. I mean, he couldn't see me. He wouldn't have missed me, but you know.
Now that was a mean joke. That
wasn't me
talking about his vision. No, it's just too much. It really is. Even football prices in the U.S. I wouldn't pay a college game paying $200 or $300 to go to the game. Watch it on TV. Watch it. Listen to it on radio and visualize it. But I'm not spending $300 to go and watch a damn football game. I'm not doing it.
Do you know when I've been to like UFC or wrestling and have had bad seats, do you know what I'm doing? I'm just looking up at the screen and watching it on the screen. And I'm paying for the privilege.
No kidding. You're in the crowd. Yeah. So unless it's tax deductible and you had your business by it.
Now, we've talked about this not too long ago. WWE, with Clash at the Castle, I think like a get-in price was like the equivalent of $350 or $400. It was a huge amount of money, right? But the fact is that WWE was actually selling those tickets, and there's the difference. So, but like AEW, they're really pricing their fans out, and they've jacked up the price at Wembley this year as compared to last year, and they're sold about half the tickets. So, they won't make as much. They're not going to make as big a loss, obviously, but they're pricing people out a lot at the moment, AEW. WWE can get away with it, but AEW can't.
You know who else? Are you recording right now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You know who else did that?
Well,
priced themselves out of Disney in Orlando. Oh, it just skyrocketed. Because what they did, they didn't want like average people really coming because they caused problems. So they just shut the prices up. Now they have like half the people, but like their intake is more. Because now you don't have the long lines and waiting for the rides and all. Because sometimes what I call the lower scale people. They can't afford it. So it keeps them out. And I think that's they intended to keep them out.
Rightly so, as well.
Because they didn't want them there because, they didn't know how to act, I think. And I heard of fights up there, and you never used to hear that about, my daughter is an expert on Disney. You never heard of a fight at Disney, never, till after the pandemic. Then they started letting people back in, and then they lowered their prices now. And then they saw, well, we got to go up on them. And I think that's why they did it.
So, like, people started squaring up on Goofy.
Or Mickey Mouse. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Take that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably makes a funny noise when you punch him. Next question. Sandy says, hello, Dutch. Do you have any stories on Bill Irwin? You worked with him and booked him in Florida. You were also in WCW together and the WWF when he was the Goon. How did he even wrestle in those ridiculous tapered boots? They looked so unstable.
Well, I remember him as the Goon. And this was a period in WWF where they brought in a bunch of different guys at one time. They brought them in all at one time. It was the Goon. I forgot who else but it was about
Tracy Smothers, T.L. Hopper.
T.L. Hopper was the plumber.
Hmm.
What was
Tracy was Freddie Joe Floyd.
Yeah.
Which was there. Jack and Jerry Briscoe's real names, I believe.
Yeah. And they brought a couple more, but none of them got over.
Do you know the Pug? Do you remember Alex Porto? They brought him. I don't know where he came from.
And what was the Pug? What's that mean?
Just a pug dog, I guess. Genuinely, I think that's what it was.
And of course, the Goon, what was his real name?
Bill Irwin.
Bill Irwin. And I really got to know Bill fairly well when I was in Florida, when I was booking in Florida. And he came in with a bullwhip. And I had the bullwhip. And I knew he had the bullwhip. I said, where did you get this bullwhip? He says, when I saw you, or something like that. So, of course, if he's got the bullwhip and I got the bullwhip, what's a natural match? It's me against him in a bullwhip match. Well, I booked the first one, and I had like a week to go. Oh, I wish I hadn't booked it. Because Bill was pretty good with it, but it hurt like hell. So I would go back to the dressing room on the first night. I says, damn, you think you could hurt just a little bit? You think you could hurt me a little bit more with that bullwhip? He said, what? I said, oh, brother, that first one you threw, oh, man. And then he'd look at my leg, and it'd be all damn cut up and all. A week of that, and I wish I never booked it. So, and I left about a month or so later, but Bill was a good worker, a great worker, and I still talk to him still today. I don't know where he is. I think he's back in Minnesota, living up there. So,
did he have a brother? Was it Scott Irwin?
His brother died.
Right, but he was a wrestler as well, wasn't he?
He was. Yeah. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
And I remember when it happened. I don't know what happened to him. His brother got sick. I forgot what happened to him. And they would go as a tag team with each other. I think the brother was a little bigger than Bill. So, but he passed away. Yeah, I don't think Scott really ever got over that.
Well, Scott died.
Yes.
Bill didn't get over it. Scott died in 1987 of a brain tumor. He was 35.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Scott ever got over, Bill ever got over that.
Yeah.
So.
Is that not
both of them are good guys, really good guys.
Is that not gimmick infringement where Bill turned up with a bullwhip like you?
Well, I stole my bullwhip too. So,
which Bass maybe, or who do you steal yours from?
Well, I stole mine from Ox Baker.
He had a bullwhip.
Well,
I don't remember seeing him with a
Ox,
bullwhip.
well, he never wore it. He never took it to the ring. He just had one. And he brought it one time. And I says, and I was just fascinated by the bullwhip. And Ox, he looked perfect with it. You know, he got that big mustache, you know, go, ah. And he'd hit his hands together, ah. And he would, well, so he would, I said, how do you do that bullwhip? So he tried to show me, and I kind of got the theory how a bullwhip worked. So I said, can I borrow that? He said, oh yeah, take it, you know. And I took it for a while, and I was trying to teach myself, I know nothing about it, but I'm trying to teach myself how to use the bullwhip, because I'm figuring, well, wait a minute. The first guy that had the bullwhip, he didn't know how it worked. So he had to figure it out. So I said, hell, I can figure that out. Oh my God. Nobody told me you were supposed to throw it out there and wait for it to catch and let its weight kill itself. I would throw it out there and I'd pull it back. Well, pulling it back was the worst thing you could do, because now it's coming back at you at almost the same speed as it had when you threw it out. And I have blistered my own ass big time with that bullwhip. And it took me about, I don't know, it took me about at least a month to learn how to do it. I think finally Ox said, you throw it out there and you wait for the speed to pop, and it kills its own power. He said, if you're pulling it back before it pops, he said, it's gonna pop all right, but it's gonna pop on your butt. So, but I kind of taught myself how to use it. And I had a 12-footer one time. I had a 10-footer. The best ones like the 8-footers, you know, but you have more control over. But I've seen those guys, the experts, they get it. They could do 5 pops and like pow, 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 just that fast. So, but it's if you don't know what you're doing and you pull it back, it's coming right at your head too, or mine did. And I would be ducking, and he got me on the ear one time. It was embarrassing, really. I wouldn't do it in front of anybody because they thought I was like some kind of an expert with it. And I showed that I didn't know nothing about a bullwhip. But when I finally learned it, you know, I was decent with it. Not the best, but I was just decent.
We shall move on. Matthew says, Shawn Michaels retired for 4 years due to a back injury in 1998. At WrestleMania 14, and made a full-time comeback in quotation marks at SummerSlam 2002. And he somehow, in April 2000, managed to work a match for his wrestling school he had in Texas, TWA, in a street fight. Do you think that his back injury was meant to be a work in the sense of him being infamously awkward behind the scenes, such as losing his smile as another example of his unprofessional backstage antics? Also, how do you think other promoters, bookers like yourself, Bill Watts or Jerry Jarrett, would have handled him? Now, I want to address this with Shawn. I believe that WWF were looking to bring Shawn Michaels back as early as 1999, but partially an injury, partially because he was a drug addict, and that was very much the issue. That's why he didn't come back earlier, I believe. Partially, if not wholly. As far as that goes, Shawn Michaels' backstage attitude. We've already talked about the story with the Harris brothers, and they weren't fans of him. But what do you find about Shawn Michaels in 1995 at his obnoxious best/worst?
I would just see him at the shows. So he wasn't overly friendly. I can say that. Now, you mentioned that he was, and he was doing, he was using drugs. And using drugs would cause your personality to change. If you were really, really friendly and you're using drugs, well, you may become unfriendly, not by your own accord, but because the drugs are taking over. You're taking on a whole different personality. And what was the rest of that question?
Well, ultimately, I'll ask the rest of it in a minute, but yeah, your idea of just, was he difficult to deal with for you? Or, I mean, how much did you really deal with him? Or how did you see him treat other people in in backstage?
He wasn't, well, I'll say he wasn't well liked because I didn't see him talking to many people. Not many people really wanted to talk to him. If he spent time with anybody at the matches back in those days, it was with Vince in a private meeting, because Vince loved him for some reason. Vince, when they did that Sayonara in Madison Square Garden, it was Nash and it was Hall and it was Triple H. And but he couldn't punish Nash and Hall because they were leaving. And he couldn't publish Shawn because Shawn was the champion. The only one he could punish was Triple H. And I've talked about this before. He really punished the hell out of him. But
well, you alluded to something before, right? That there's been a rumor going around for many, many years, and I'm sure there's no truth. Well, you never know with Vince these days. I mean, honestly, but there was a rumor going around that Vince and Shawn Michaels were lovers backstage in the 90s, or backstage. You know what I mean? Did you ever hear that rumor while you were in the locker room?
Oh, you hear everything in the locker room. But see, since it was with Vince, and since it was with Shawn, Vince owns the company and is the boss and the booker. So ultimately, he's the highest one in the company with the power to fire you. So therefore, and Shawn was his boy, was his guy. And you hear everything, but you make sure nobody heard it from you. If you were talking to somebody, you better be sure that they're a pretty good friend and they don't have somebody else's ear up the chain, because you didn't want what you said going up that chain and finally getting to Vince, because then you'd be out of a job. So, but I have heard that before, and I don't know if that's true or not.
Did you put any credence in it at the time?
Well, I had no reason to doubt it, tell you the truth. I just heard rumors, and Vince and Shawn spent an inordinate amount of time in that little room at TV with Vince, and he was the champion, and Vince was doing everything with him. And yeah, rumors like that get around. Now that I think about it, I don't think that was the case, but who knows?
So later WWE, I know that Shawn Michaels, by the time you were Zeb Colter, had already retired from WWE, but I presume he was there, from time to time. Did you have any interactions with the allegedly born-again Shawn Michaels with a revamped attitude? Did you have any words with him then?
No, not really. When he got religion, No. Listen, anybody that's got religion around me, I don't want to hear it. I really don't. Because all the shit they did, and they're going to try to preach to me about living the word of God, I could tell you by sitting down that they're full of shit. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to waste my time listening to somebody. All of a sudden, he's had this completely different understanding of the world and the Bible, and he's trying to tell me about it. I don't want to hear it because I grew up with that, and I do not want to hear it.
Right, we're going to move on. Derek, I recently saw Marty Jannetty say that Roddy Piper liked to try and make out with male younger wrestlers like Pat Patterson. Any truth to this issue? Thanks.
First of all, you know what's wrong with that sentence?
Yes.
He gets to make out with younger gay male wrestlers like Pat Patterson. No,
well, Pat was
reverse
older.
That. Yeah, Pat was older, and
maybe he means like Pat Patterson did. So okay, was Roddy Piper trying to make out with the young male wrestlers? I have never heard this in my life.
Never. Oh, Roddy may have gotten really soused, drunk, and tried to play around and mess around like that. But no, Roddy Roddy wasn't gay. But I used to ride, I was in Florida. You know, I met a lot of guys in Florida. Pat Patterson, I used to ride with him almost for a while, almost every day. And he was hilarious. And I knew he was gay then. And it didn't bother me because he never said anything to me about being gay or never made any moves toward me. He was just a guy. And I wanted to find out. He was a big star in San Francisco. And I wanted to see what he did there. Him and Ray Stevens, they owned that territory for years and years and years. So, and I was trying to pick his brain, and he was good. And you know, all the Southern jokes, he was from Canada, really. And he'd never heard that stuff because he'd never really been down south except to Florida. That was the first time he'd ever come down south, even worked in the South. He spent most of his time in San Francisco. And he came to Florida, and all my jokes were brand new. So he loved all those Southern jokes I tell, and he would laugh and laugh and laugh. I had a great time with Pat. Found him very informative. And then when I met him again, ran across him again, he was in WWF, and he was like one of the agents, and Vince trusted him strongly, very strongly. And I think Pat gave him the Royal Rumble idea, or he gave him some idea.
That was based upon an idea in San Francisco back in like the
Battle
70s.
Royal, the Battle Royal, right?
Yeah, and then that was sort of developed and then brought to WWF and became the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and he gave him that idea. So, and they took it and made it bigger than what it was, or as big as they could. But Pat Patterson, no, I never knew Roddy Piper to kiss a guy or do anything like that.
Did you ever meet Pat Patterson's partner, Louis Dondero?
I did meet him. Louis.
Yeah. Any stories about Louis? I don't know many.
He would come with Pat sometimes. I swear to God, they were like an old married couple, which I found out later they were. I think they actually got married. It wasn't legal, but they did get married. And Louis would come in there, and Pat said, "Oh, God damn it, Louis, you fucking pain." He said, "You're a pain in the ass." And he would just cuss him out. And Louis would say, "Hey, well, F you. Fuck you." And they'd get in an argument in the dressing room, then they'd leave. Then you see them again the next night, and they were fine. So they fought like an old married couple. And I think when Louis died, I don't know, what was his last name?
Dondero.
I think when Louis died, I think that really messed Pat up.
Yeah, I think he died like maybe in the late 90s or something like that. I've not read Pat's book. I'd have heard it's pretty
What
good.
did he die of?
I can look it up. I'm going to pause actually, one sec.
Mm-hmm.
He died of a heart attack in 1998. They'd been together for 40 years.
How long?
They've been partners for 40 years, Louis and Pat.
Wow. So
they were an old married couple, even when you met him in the 70s, I guess.
You know, the strange thing about Pat is he was openly gay in the wrestling profession. Everybody knew he was gay. But he was treated no differently than anybody else. Because I think that and there were some guys who just hated gay people. I can't remember who they were, but I knew gay people as some guys just hated gay people, but nobody said anything about Pat. It was business as usual. So I'm thinking that, and I've had people ask me, how were the gay people treated? No differently than anybody else, because hey, in wrestling, we're used to the freaks and the geeks. That's what you had to put up with.
Yeah, you're all treated like shit equally.
Oh, basically. But Pat had a tremendous head on his shoulders for the wrestling business, because he had booked San Francisco for a number of years, and they did great business. So And but gay guys in the wrestling business, I said that we were all treated equally like shit, but just among the boys, Pat was highly respected.
Right, I'm going to give you a couple more questions. We're going to shut this down. Daniel says, do you think Cody Rhodes has actually flopped as champion? And the only reason why nobody is talking about it is because of how hot everything else is, like the Bloodline and the Judgment Day. So it goes under the radar that actually his title reign has been underwhelming. Thanks. That's a controversial take there, maybe. What do you think?
That is. There's no way you can say that it has been a failure, because everything else is so hot. This is, Triple H knows the value of a story. That's why SummerSlam was so good, because all the stories came together and they were scheduled to come together on SummerSlam. And that's why I think they're going to have I would like to see the numbers on the pay-per-views, what they got. Would you have any numbers on that?
Which pay-per-view exactly?
SummerSlam.
No, it's
too early. Yeah. But it was a great show.
Well, pay-per-view means nothing anyway because it's on Peacock, so it would be viewership figures. But what we think we know is that SummerSlam 2024 will be the most watched SummerSlam of all time. So they're touting.
Yeah. See, I'm still stuck 10 years ago in pay-per-view, the buy rate. But it was very good. I've already talked about how good the show was, how much I enjoyed it. And when I enjoy a show, it's got to be good. It's got to really be good.
Do you know who didn't enjoy it?
Who?
Dave Meltzer.
Of course.
It's just it was all right.
Bullshit. It was a great show because I think David, I think if he just loosen up and be a fan, it didn't have all the technical wrestling. Hell, it was a good show. I really enjoyed the Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley match, and with the involvement of Dominic. Great. Because they told a story going in, they told a story coming out that will take us at least probably to next year at WrestleMania. So, and I think all of it was good. Now, getting back to Cody, I think hard to determine whether Cody's reign is a success or not. But if you just go by just merchandise sold, Cody's selling the hell out of it. But if you look at Cody going to the ring, who's he appealing to? Almost everybody in that audience. The women like him, good-looking guy. The kids love him to death. And I think the guys, I think maybe about 75% of them, they like him okay. Me personally, I'm not such a big fan of his, but I can't deny his merchandise selling and the story that he's told it masterfully. So,
because you mentioned merchandise, I've got a list for you. Number one in WWE, this is 2024 up to this top 10 for May and 2024 year to date. Number one is Cody Rhodes. Number two is CM Punk. Number three is Jey Uso with the Yeet shirts. Number four is Roman Reigns. And number five is WWE in general. So there you go. He's at the top of the tree, so can't complain about that.
No, so if you just go by that, he's over, and they're going to keep him in that spot. Because I think that, and by having Roman Reigns show up at SummerSlam, see, there's several stories that haven't been told. Roman still has an issue with Cody. Now he has now Roman, he has a double pointed angle. He's got one with the rest of the family, the tribe, and he has one with Cody. Now let's bring in Paul Heyman, Paul Heyman, And now he hates the rest of the guys that beat the crap out of him. And so this has a lot of doors leading in and out, and that'll easily take him to SummerSlam.
Okay, we're going to end on this question from George.
To WrestleMania next year.
George says, "Hi, Dutch and James. I'd like to hear more about some of the best enhancement talent that Dutch has known over the decades. I know one name that comes up more than any other is George South." Sure interviewed him as well. Charming fella. I like George.
Great guy.
Give us some George South stories. I'm not sure maybe we have. I can't remember. But
I was going to do a show for him one time, and I left late, and it was way over there in North Carolina, which means I had to go. I was in Nashville. It was a long trip, and I left too late. Me and Buddy Landell.
Was it your fault or his?
Oh, yeah, it's his fault, of course. And Buddy got high in the back, and he slept most of the way then we got there late and barely made the show, and we missed a couple matches, and I think he felt bad about it, but he had to have somebody fill in, and we didn't get all of our money. Of course, it was our fault. So we got what we could, and then we limped back in like, boy, this is a wasted ass day and a long day too. But George, he's very religious. You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Highly religious. And he runs good shows because he's the main event of these shows, and he knows his audience, and he goes out there and he's always the heel, even though he's a baby face before the match starts. He's a heel during the show, and a great heel. And I think and he goes in and he does it the old-fashioned way. He'll go in and he'll get a sponsor, say the football team, and they'll sell all these tickets, and he gives them a good split of it. But he'll do a good show. And when the show's over, I've been to some shows, like independent shows. It was embarrassing to even put the show on. So whoever sponsored that show, they're embarrassed too, because the people come up to them later in the town. Everybody knows everybody, and say, boy, that was a crappy show you guys brought in. And the guy said, well, I'll never bring wrestling back in. But with George, they bring him back because he puts on a hell of a show. Everybody has a good time, and it's family time because you can bring your kids to it. There's no cussing. There's no this. There's no that. And it's a good, wholesome show. And George does a great job. I don't really have any stories about George per se, but I've never heard anything bad about him.
You've wrestled him, though, haven't you?
Oh, I've wrestled him. Yeah, he's very good.
Yeah. And
I think he would like to have gone and been and I think he had the skill to be a bigger star. But I think he spent so much time. This was in the days of WCW and those days. So you had about 9,000 independents running. I mean, this independent cannot run this town, then another independent run it the next 2 weeks, and then another, eventually you burn the town out. Nobody wants to see wrestling anymore. They've had it so many times. I've seen towns like that, and George would go in there and he'd get these towns up, and then it would become a regular town. He runs a wrestling school too. And I think that anybody knows wrestling, George would be a great mentor and a great instructor.
George strikes me as someone who's got absolutely no ego as far as wins and losses, because when I interviewed him, and I'm sure I've heard him say it elsewhere, I was like, listen, I got 5 houses out of losing every single night. It doesn't mean anything.
No,
you know what I mean?
And
it's a great attitude to have. It's like, well, I'm booked constantly. I was good. Doesn't matter who was staring up at the lights.
Right. It don't matter. What matters at the end of the day is whether you've enriched yourself or enhanced your financial standing. And he runs these shows and he beats himself. So, and he's usually a heel, and he puts the baby faces over. Everybody leaves happy. He goes over there and he collects the gate of the house. He settles up with a sponsor. Now he goes to his concession stand that he runs, and he makes good money off that. So he can go into a town with absolutely nothing and leave with $5,000 or $6,000. Not bad.
Not bad indeed. On that basis, we are going to leave without $6,000, but, we'll leave for something, I'm sure. And we're going to shut down this podcast, and we will see you again on Friday. Once again, the email is questionsfordutch@gmail.com. If you want to email this show, so many of you do every single week, we can't get to every question. We do our best. But for now, we will see you again on Friday for Storytime and Dutch We the People.
We the people. See you next Friday.